All right, so I realized I wasn't going to be able to make uh, that time. We only had a few seconds left in that last screencast, so figured I'd start a new one. So we just spoke about a number of different things. One of the big elements of any war is the new technology that is developed during it. We just spoke about the B-29s, and kind of has two inverted sort of elements to that idea. Is that the B-29s are these long-range bombers. It's a new part of weaponry during World War II, but it also was effective and successful in limiting the industrial output of what the Japanese could do. So on both ends, it's successful. But some of the other new weapons in World War II and some of the new elements of what's being created are just astounding and really, really powerful. So first, a combination of a long-range rocket, not just a long-range airplane, and of course, most notably, the atomic bomb. So let's spend a couple minutes with just the atomic bomb and its influence on the end of World War II, because that's where we see its only use, its only live and active use during a war scenario ever in history. So this is really, really important stuff. So atomic bomb, absolute destruction. We were just speaking a moment ago about how absolute surrender for the Japanese to them was a destruction of divine monarchy. Is really, really important to note too. So let's look at a couple of different things. So here you have a letter from Einstein in which he is writing about his thoughts and his work on the science behind the atomic bomb. Okay, without getting too much into science here. Okay, and he is speaking about how this could basically level an entire city. It has the ability to level an entire port, not knowing exactly what the intent for its placement, this bomb's placement yet is. But we know eventually Hiroshima, not to call it necessarily the Pittsburgh of Japan, but it's an industrial center. So its target, it is a target that's chosen for that reason, so that it can limit what the Japanese, can create as far as its military output, as we've seen already. Under Harry Truman, the new president, right, when he becomes president on the death of FDR, he immediately hears from his Secretary of War, and that there's something very important that we need to speak of. It's a secret matter, a highly secret matter. In fact, it's what he speaks of. Harry Truman has no idea what he's about to tell him, but of course, this is one of the biggest elements of and biggest secrets the Manhattan Project is during this period of time. So Harry Truman is going to, hear about this for the first time. And it's going to keep him up nights, frankly. And a lot of these guys are going to be kept up nights with this. What is the debate? Is this to basically to use the bomb or not to use this kind of bomb? To use this kind of weapon or not to use this kind of weapon? We've seen what it can do in tests, okay, like the Trinity test in July of 1945. So we will see. In other words, in April, of course, Harry Truman doesn't even have that information. But what kind of devastation will this actually create? So some of the debate over that is as follows. Okay, Americans were suffering, right? Casualties were suffering. The Japanese were showing no signs of negotiation. We just saw that the emperor is reiterating that absolute surrender, unconditional surrender, is not a foreseeable item for the Japanese at all. A ceasefire was non-negotiable. So just simply a ceasefire would go against what the Atlantic Charter spoke of in this unconditional surrender element to begin with. So that's not okay with the American side, and unconditional surrender is not okay with the Japanese side. But the United States dropped the bomb. If the United States dropped the bomb, surrender and peace would probably occur. But we're talking about hundreds of thousands of lives lost. So it's a big problem. Okay. Now, all of this unconditional surrender and what's to happen to Japan after the war is over, we saw these things come up at various conferences during World War II's European theater, Screencast, and that side of the war. Here you have the same type of thing. All these conversations are happening by the new big three, which is Clement Attlee from Great Britain. Okay, eventually it's still Joseph Stalin from the Soviet Union, and now Harry Truman. So when they meet at Potsdam, they talk about a number of different items. Okay, but some of the items that come up, again, are to reiterate that unconditional surrender is the only type of surrender that we'll go for. And, also that what's to happen to Japan after the war is over. Okay, eventually what we'll see is that reconstruction of Japan and its occupation by the United States is what will happen. In Germany, we saw the quartering off of it into different zones that will be, under the management of various Allied forces after the war. But all these questions are now coming up because the war seems to be, the end of the war seems to be imminent. So we just cannot get, meaning the Allies, the United States, speaking from the Allied perspective, just cannot get the Japanese to agree to an unconditional surrender. So some of the other elements that come up in the debate over whether or not to use the bomb are about the lives that it might save. It sounds ironic to say that the bomb might actually save lives. But at this point, because the United States are blockading through their island hopping campaign many of the islands in the Pacific, they are basically starving the populations of these respective islands, including Japan. And just on that alone, non-combatants, that means people who are civilians who are not involved directly in the fighting are dying at 200,000 per month. 200,000 per month. So, and trying to end the war as quickly as possible, the thought is that the blockade would then be over, and then, these people could, be restored a better and more healthy lifestyle. What if we invaded Japan? Could we invade Japan? If the United States, again, speaking from the Allied perspective, if America did invade Japan, many Americans would have died, right? Secretary of State at the time, Burns, claims 500,000 or 500,000. Again, this is powerful data to use, right, in order to make a decision of whether or not to use an atomic bomb. Total combat deaths over 4 years of war for the American side, right, 292,000. You're talking about almost double that in one invasion of Japan, assuming that the fighting is going to be as fierce as it has been. So we turn, again, from the American perspective, the United States turns to the fission bomb, right, or the more appropriately named Fat Man and Little Boy, as they're called. These are the two bombs dropped respectively on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, thus ending the war. And turning basically what once were booming industrial sites into ruins, and just really, really destroying people's ways of life for a long period of time. An atomic bomb is not something that's just going to destroy structures. It's going to destroy your ability to farm. It's going to destroy people's bodies over periods of time. People that didn't die necessarily all at once would slowly have a more gradual death because of the nuclear reactions there and the chemicals that are involved. And again, science is beyond me, but that's what it comes down to. It's still not even after Hiroshima, the Japanese agree to surrender. It's after another bombing of Nagasaki with another atomic bomb that the Japanese finally agree to surrender. This is happening on the USS Missouri. If you recall, I was telling you about that this same boat, the same battleship, is parked here now, right in Pearl Harbor. This is a modern day image next to the USS Arizona. So you have literally the beginning of the end of the war, the same spot in Pearl Harbor today. Japanese finally surrender in September 1945, and they agree to a ceasefire, of course, and the release of any prisoners of war. So the legacy of this is large. We'll definitely spend more time discussing the legacy of the atomic bomb through the Cold War, the Holocaust, which certainly deserves its own screencast. And now you have some words from Robert Oppenheimer that I'll just sort of leave with you, because it really speaks volumes of someone who was there during the Manhattan Project, someone who had a lot to do with the creation of the atomic bomb, and the fact that ultimately the world has changed forever, and there really is no going back. And it's a scary sort of thought when you have somebody who's such an integral part of creating the atomic bomb saying the words that he's saying here, okay, about the fact that he's he's sort of torn, I think, inside about his work on this kind of project, and now seeing up close what it did to so many Japanese lives. It's not quite what he envisioned. So, or maybe it is what he envisions. It could be scary enough. So, all right.